This sporting great began his physical training the hard way by lumping 50-pound bags of potatoes in either hand in his mother's grocery store. After turning professional, his fights united the whole of Ireland. The former featherweight champion of the world, he is Barry McGuigan. Barry, 35 pro fights, 32 wins, 28 knockouts. You were born and brought up in a town called Clonus in the centre of Ireland. What was that like? What was life in Clonus like?
Well, I remembered it as a great time. It was, my father was a professional musician. They owned a grocery business. They bought the business of a guy called Charlie Slowey way back in the 60s, because I was only 2.5 when we moved in there. And they had a thriving business. My mother ran the business with the help of her dad, Johnny Rooney, and all the grannies and uncles and aunts were there for. There were 8 of us, so they had to help out as babysitting and so on and so forth. But it was great, transient life. My father had musicians coming in and out of the house, so impromptu jamming sessions that we grew up with, and it was tremendous.
Music was always a big part of your life then?
Very much so.
Yeah.
You know, Phil Coulter was always there. We had James Galway used to call down. My father was a pretty notorious guy in those times, and he sang in the Eurovision Song Contest in '68. And you know, as I say, my mother's business, it was like open house. You know, everybody was in and out, and it was. And we were. I sort of was the most responsible one. I'm painting myself as a goody two shoes, but it's the truth. When I was about sort of 9 or 10, I realised that, you know, she needed help, and I used to help stack the shelves and put out the groceries. And by the way, it wasn't 50-pound bags of spuds, it was 56 pounds.
56 pounds?
I remember them very.
That 12 pounds would make a lot of difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you were 9 or 10 years old, it made an awful lot of difference. But we used to, I used to sort of, with my brother Dermot, we used to put the vegetables out. It was a full-time job, putting the vegetables out, presenting them, weighing the half-stone bags of potatoes and bringing out the briquettes, which are used to light fire. Peat, the hardened peat. And it was a, you know, it was an enjoyable time, and lots of people coming in and out of the shop, and my mother was open until 11 and 12 at night. It was
open all hours.
Open all hours, it really was, and up early in the morning, and you know, my grandfather had a routine. He would come home at 9 and go home at 1 and come back again at 3 and stay to 6, and it was great. Right.
So life revolved around the shop. And when did you actually realise you could fight? Did you put on boxing gloves first of all and realise that you could pack a punch, or were you a scrapper before you put the gloves on?
No, I was always pretty good at looking after myself, and I think I needed, because I was so much shorter than everybody else, being vertically challenged as I am.
What height are you?
I'm 5'6".
Right.
But when I was obviously younger, most of the guys were bigger than me in my class, so I had to be tough. And when I remember the very first day I saw a pair of boxing gloves. We used to hang out with a bunch of guys, and we went into this old derelict building, and there was one pair of boxing gloves, and most of the guys are bigger than me, and we wore a glove each. We had a competition, and I got to the final, and I was pretty good at it. And I thought, my father, you know, I said to him, bring me out to the local club, which was 9 miles away, and it was a place called Wattlebridge, and there was a quick way through the north into the club, which was like a 6-mile journey, or you go 9.5, 10 miles staying in the south. So we used to go through the north, myself.
Yes, you had to cross the border, just
to
explain that to people.
To go through the border, there was an unapproved road you had to go out, and there was barricades on it, and the army were there. So that was obviously not the right way to go, but for us it was the quickest way. And myself, a guy called Noel McGovern, we used to cycle out there with my brother Dermot, and then there was a horrible accident one night where a few people were killed, and the IEC were out, and my mother heard about it and said, you're not going out there anymore. So I had to go to the Smithborough Boxing Club. But I realised pretty quickly that I was good at it, and I was able to punch my weight, and I had great power, and didn't have a great deal of skill at the beginning, but I had power and enthusiasm.
And that must be a win for McGuigan, and a very fine win indeed it is.
You had a fantastic amateur record. You rose up through the ranks very, very quickly. And you experienced an Olympic Games in 1980 in Moscow.
That's right. I won the Commonwealth Games gold in '78, and a European bronze in 1980. I was very disappointed. I was beaten by the world champion in the semi-final, and I thought I'd beaten him from here to Cork and back, but they gave it to him. And then I went to the Olympic Games, and I captained the Irish boxing team in Moscow, and it was a great experience.
So the final round of this featherweight bout, Barry McGuigan of Ireland from the Smithborough Club, Monaghan, Finbar McGuigan, that's his real name, Barry for short, and Isaac Mabushi of Tanzania, the 26-year-old man from Africa, and his legs have gone again.
What was it like the first time then that you had to take the white vest off, the amateur vest, and realise that you were a pro? Did you feel naked in more ways than one?
Well, I did actually. I remember the first night I had a professional fight. I'll never forget it, because it was in Dalymount Park, and Charlie Nash lost his European title to a guy called Joey Gibilisco, and I was supposed to be the fight pre the world title or the European title fight, and I was very nervous, and the ground was soaking, and it was really wet as it always is in Dublin, and it was a late summer, early autumn night, and I would put plastic bags over my boots so that I wouldn't get wet as I walked to the ring.
Yeah.
And I was just about to leave. I had my gown on and my gloves on and the bags over my boots. And then they said, no, the TV executive ran and said, no, you can't go because the fight's got to go live, the main event, and we're coming too close. And mine was a 6-round contest. So I had to go in and listen on this old tannoy system to one of my heroes, Charlie Nash, getting absolutely battered by this guy, Joey Gibilisco. Well, he didn't get battered, but he put up a good fight. But he lost his title, and I heard all the drama, and it frightened the life out of me. And I had to go out there and take and I was outside, and I remember talking about feeling cold. It was freezing when I took the gown off, but I got that over and done within a round and a half, and that was the start of it.
And that was the start of it. There you were, your professional career launched. And Barry, it is a career and it is a life with amazing highs and lows. I want to talk about professionally probably the biggest low, and it was your 12th professional fight. It was a 6th-round knockout. The opponent was young Ali from Nigeria. Tell me what you remember of that fight.
It was a tragic night. The young man died after the fight, and I remember him being very tough, and I remember the fight being fought at a frenetic pace, as most of my fights were, and I pushed him, and I kept him on his back foot, and he was the East African champion, and I kept on top of him, kept pressurising him and throwing right hands, and I remember coming back after the 4th round and saying, this guy's tough, you know, I've hit him with everything, he's still not going over, and he's still throwing back at me. And then I remember Eddie Shaw and Paddy Burns saying, well, take a round off, you know, take it easy in this round, and then have a go at him again. And it was an 8-round contest, and it was in a great room in the Grosvenor House. I'll never forget, every time I go into that room now, I just get the shivers, you know. And I came out in the 5th, took it easy. I came out in the 6th, and then I set about him again with with my right hand, and I hit him with one powerful right hand, and he just fell, and that was it. And I remember looking at his eyes, and his eyes just rolled, and he fell on the floor. And I didn't think at the time, I just thought it had happened so many times before where I'd knocked guys out and they got up and got on with it. But I remember Eastwood coming over and said, this kid's hurt. And I said, what? It had never happened to me before. And he was badly hurt, and he was in a coma for 5 months, and he died. And I'll never forget it, because, you know, at that stage my career had just started. My wife was working full-time to keep me, and you know, I had earned almost nothing. I had completely dedicated my life to boxing, and I didn't want to box anymore. And I walked away, and I walked around the hills and my dog, and just you know, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know whether to carry on or not, and then I decided, you know, I was going to dedicate my career completely and totally, and if I were lucky enough to win a world title, I would dedicate it to him. And that's what happened the night I won the world. I was crying and I could hardly say it, but I dedicated it to young Ali.
I'd like to take this opportunity, you know, to say one thing. I've been thinking about it all week, and I said if I won this world title, I would dedicate it to the young lad that died when he fought me in 1982. And I said at the start that I would like it to be not just an ordinary fighter that beat him, but a world champion.
You got on with your business. British and European title fights followed, and titles obviously with them. And I mean, I felt I was very privileged as a ringside reporter to watch many of those and to share them with people who were sharing them in Belfast at the time. And it was very, very significant, very significant. We were in the early 80s, the troubles were rife. And this wasn't just a boxing match.
No.
This was uniting this whole city. It was an amazing feeling.
Yeah, fantastic feeling. And because I came from the south and boxed in the north and boxed for the British title, and yet was an Irishman, and had appealed, I was a Catholic married to a Protestant, and you knew that because you and I, our careers sort of are parallel, because you grew up in as a young sports commentator and presenter, and you know, I mean, we were probably, we started out in a professional careers at the same time, so you understand how significant it was that being able to unite the two sides. And it really was special. People talk about it, you know, tongue in cheek. Oh yeah, but you know, it really didn't mean that much. But you know that it did, and I know that it did. And although people, you know, were only together for a night or whatever, people who never associated with one another would go off to watch me fight, and travel together and celebrate together. And
people who never watched boxing.
No, who never watched boxing. People who weren't. I remember one, for example, one story was my bank manager in Clones. Brought his wife along, who was a very sort of conservative, middle-aged woman, and he looked around when I was fighting Laporte in the King's Hall, screaming, 10,000 screaming fans. He looked around in the 7th round and he couldn't see her anywhere, and he realised she was standing on the stool, screaming her heads off, you know. So it was a great appeal, and it was a great time. And, you know, as you say, it was a pretty volatile time in Belfast.
Yeah.
It was an exceptional.
And you were a hero. You were an absolute hero. And greater nights were to follow. 1985, the world title fight, Loftus Road. I was in Belfast that night, and I remember Belfast was deserted.
Yeah,
absolutely, the streets were empty.
They fly jumbo jets over from Belfast where that many people came over. We reckon about 12,000 people came over. There was 27,000 people there at the fight itself, but it was a great night. And Douglas Hurd came when he was the Secretary for State at the time, and I was in my hotel in London. He came in. It was a, you know, and I coming up to the fight had total tunnel vision. I didn't sort of allow myself to see what else was going on, and the press was just full of it, and it was great to watch it afterwards. And
what about the pressure on you? Did you know that you were going to be world champion?
No, I had always confidence in my own ability, but I wasn't sure at any time that I was going to win the title. I knew I had a good chance, and that's what made it special. When when it came into the second half of the fight, I was strong, and I had dropped Pedrosa and I had taken control of it, and you know, it was just a great night. But you know, the pressure really of being you know, the hopeful of so many people hit me afterwards. Not at the time, but you know, I suddenly realised when I came back home. I went to Belfast, and there were 70,000 people gathered in 1 hour to see me walk, you know, driven down
Royal
Avenue, and then I went to O'Connell Street 4 days later, and 400,000 people came out. It was just an amazing time. I'll never forget it. And people often ask me, "Well, what was the highlight?" That was the highlight, you know, rather than the fight itself, because I was in the middle of it, and I watched the fight these times, and I don't even watch the fight. I watch the people at ringside, guys I knew, and some people have passed away, and you know, old faces and old friends, and it's great to watch them and watch them excited, you know, because it was a great night.
And McGuigan in danger of being swamped by his own fans before he even reaches the ring. McGuigan's work has not been so effective in this round. He hasn't found the range. Yes, he did. He's got it with the right. Oh, the champion's over in the 7th. He found him with the right.
£8. Is the title about to change hands? 30 seconds to go. Can McGuigan do it here and now? Good right from McGuigan, and his legs have gone. The champion could be on his way out. 9th round, and the bells come. Nobody's heard the bell, including the referee. The manager of Pedrosa's in. And Pedrosa is on very, very rocky legs as he goes back to the corner. Good right, he's found him with the right again. And Pedrosa's hurt. And a left and another left, and he's going. He's going, the legs have gone. It's the 13th round, and Pedrosa's on the verge of defeat again. 20 seconds, and then it goes to the referee and the two judges. But there must only be one winner. 10 seconds, and Pedrosa is going to survive. What a marvellous champion. He takes 2 rights at the end, and that surely must be the end of Pedrosa's reign as champion. Everybody in the place is acclaiming McGuigan the victor. But to make it official, we have to wait for the official score. But McGuigan is hoisted on his handler's shoulders. They've already decided that there is only one winner.
2 successful defences followed. Did you feel on top of the world? Did you feel that you were a sporting great?
I felt, you know, obviously it gives you confidence winning the title, and the first defence was against a very talented kid, Bernard Taylor, fabulously talented guy, Sugar Ray Leonard skills, fast, and it was a compulsory defence. I had to make it within a certain amount of days. I think it was 90 days of winning the title. So I was quickly back into the gym again, training, and I knew that it was going to be a tough fight. And I pressurised him, and I got to him after about half a dozen rounds.
8th round, desperate moments for the challenger from America. The punishment simply sweeping over him and around him and into him. And McGuigan looks to his corner and he smiles, as much as to say, I'm doing okay, don't you think? There's the bell. Terrific round. And they're throwing it in, they're throwing the towel in. Taylor doesn't want to go on. What an amazing turn of events. McGuigan has kept his title. Taylor can't go on.
But you know, in hindsight and looking back at it now, I realise it was never the same again. It just
After winning the
after
title?
Pedrosa and the adrenaline and the whatever it was, that I had achieved my goal. And in my mind, in my mind's mind, I had achieved the goal.
All the way.
I didn't realise it at the time. I trained every bit as hard, and I worked really, I really pushed myself to the limit. But it was never the same. I didn't have the same desire. I know, and that's, you know, that's an awful thing to say. It's not an awful. It's just the truth. It's just honesty. It was never the same again.
The hunger was beginning to be diminished. But I wonder, did that account in any way, Barry, looking at it now, for the growing divide that was developing behind the scenes now with your manager, Barney Eastwood? Yeah,
there was unrest and a fair amount of ill will and bad feeling, and there was a lot of unhappiness. And it wasn't just that, it was the pressures outside, it was the expectations of everybody, and there was so much, and that's why I can relate to Nassim Hamid now and what's happening to his life and what's happening outside of his life. And there are so many other things that are attached to your success, so much pressure on you. I can understand what it was like. And yes, there was unhappiness, and there's no doubt about that. And there was, we didn't have the same closeness, and things were beginning to fall apart.
And the final straw was the third defence, Las Vegas, and maybe 2 opponents. The heat was one.
Yeah, well, that, you know, it would be unfair on Stevie Cruz to just blame the heat, but the conditions were incredible. I mean, it really was just unbelievable. And there was unhappiness with myself and Eastwood, and things were not the same. And it's been painted in the press for years what's happened, and I don't really want to get into that because it cost me too much money the last time. However, you know, it's safe to say that I was an unhappy man, and I wasn't happy with a number of things, including my preparation.
It's all McGuigan can do to stand on his feet. He's out on his feet, and only the boxing brain is keeping him clear of trouble now. No punches being thrown. McGuigan's just looking for safety, and there's nowhere to find it. He's gone again. He's gone again. He gets up early again. It's a compulsory 8 count.
Losing my title and then falling out with Eastwood and having that a couple of years in court, and it was never the same again. My father died. My father passed away 10 weeks of a horrible illness, and you know, I moved to England, and the whole thing changed. The whole ball game just changed. And
it must have, the happiness, everything, because your dad was a constant fixture. There he was in the ring before the fight, singing away, you know, Irish Eyes and Danny Boy and goodness knows what.
Yeah, he was a special part of it, and he was my inspiration. You talk about my inspiration at the beginning. He was the one who got me going, who bought me my equipment, who encouraged me, who, when I used to cry with frustration because I couldn't get a move right, he would help me and console me and get me up and encourage me to get out and do it again, and drove me all over the country. So when he passed away, it was a terrible blow to me.
Barry, it's often said about fighters that many of them just don't know when to quit. They don't see the signs.
Yeah.
Did you? Did you quit too early?
I remember reading a book on Carlos Palomino, and he said the fighters are the last ones to know when it's time to quit. He says, I want to be the first. And those are my sentiments exactly. But you know, since then, I realised that in fact they're the first ones to know when it's time to quit, but the last ones to admit it to themselves.
Did anybody wave the checks under your nose and tempt you to come back?
Joking me. Don King offered me millions of dollars to come back, and you know, it was very tempting, and it was very gratifying and satisfying that someone could offer me that. But 5 minutes of reflection, and I said, oh, no, come back to your senses. And it's nice to be charmed in that way, but really, I knew it was time to quit.
You quit the ring. Life continued to offer you many bad punches below the belt, as it were. You lost your brother as well.
Yeah, my brother Dermot, who was my right hand, and was special to me. He trained with me and sparred with me, and when other guys wouldn't spar with me, he would spar, and we'd knock lumps and bumps out of each other. And it was some of my best boxing was down in my little small gym in Clones, and he was there. He was always there, training with me and running with me. And he committed suicide in '84 because him and his girlfriend fell out, and he jumped into the bottle and antidepressant tablets for a year and just couldn't get over it. And I'd done the best I thought I could for him to help him, but he just couldn't cope with it and couldn't cope with life. And you know, it was a terrible time, and it was the worst thing that ever happened to me, and I'll never forget it.
On the one hand, I mean, God had given you this great life and these great talents and whatever, and on the other hand, so much was being taken away from you.
Yeah, that was, you know, I had that sort of conflict, you know, because I believe in God, and I don't want to start preaching, but you know, I have faith, and it was tough to come to terms with that, and but I just had to get on with it, because lots of things were happening in my life, and you know, I had asked for and requested things and favours, and they had come through. So who was I to question them? You know.
Well, it certainly shows your character. Amongst the things outside, you became technical advisor on a movie, The Boxer.
That's right.
Now, Daniel Day-Lewis was the star. How good was Daniel Day-Lewis? Did you actually have to train him?
I sparred with him initially, but he was too big. He was 6'1", and I'm only 5'6", so he was too big for me, and he was 11 stone 6, or 160 pounds. He's but fit as a flea, so determined, such a nice gentleman, and gets a bad press. But let me tell you, he's the nicest guy you've ever met. He's such a fantastic character, and trained like never believe. He's so assiduous with his preparation. He trained for 2.5 years for the part. We shot the movie at the beginning of April '97. He'd been training from December '94 for the part. He trained all the way through the movie The Crucible. He sparred 300-400 rounds. He sparred extensively with the British welterweight champion Jeff McCreesh, and was boxing brilliantly. Yeah. And sparred with amateur internationals. He got his nose broken, and he sucked it up, and every day I would wipe blood off his nose. I said, Daniel, you know, we don't have to make it so tough, for God's sake. Yeah. He said, no, if I'm to understand what it's like, you know, you talk about method acting, he is the epitome of it.
Okay, can you continue?
We do, for example, 10 punches in the same direction, and we do 10 different angles, from the back of the head and the front of the head, and then we do some extemporaneous stuff, and it was all really a whole new world for me, and it was great to work with people like Brian Cox, Kent Stott, and Emily Watson, who's nominated again this year, and it was just great to work with guys like that and get a chance to do something like that. And Daniel and I have become very close friends, and we're still in touch, and he's still boxing mad, and it was a great time.
Good. Barry, I want to finish by talking about a fight which is more important than any of those that we have discussed so far, and that is the fight your young daughter Danica is waging against leukemia.
Well, you know, we talked about the movie. The end of the movie came to a crashing halt at the end, because just the last few days of shooting, and we were doing a fight scene in the studios out in Bray, and I got news that Danica had come down with leukemia, and it was a disaster. I mean, I went home in a haze. I don't remember the journey or anything. We went to the hospital, and it was an awful time for a few days. But she's responded to treatment, and I mean, brilliantly. She's back at school, and they're treating her great in St Edmunds in Canterbury, and she's top of the class in a lot of the subjects, and she's doing brilliantly well, and she's just living life like a normal child, and you know, she's in remission, and she finishes treatment in 6 months, or 18 weeks exactly. So she gets her line out, she can go back swimming, which she loves to do, and but she's living life just like an ordinary child, and she's doing great, and please God, lots of kids have lifetimes of remission. I just hope that she's one of the lucky ones, because I love her too much. Yeah,
she sounds as if she's as good a fighter as her dad.
Oh, I'm not in the same league as her.
Good, good. Thanks for talking to us, champ. Thanks
You're
very much.